Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to tournament poker strategy. And now, here are your hosts, Ron Fez Buddy and Killingbird.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. As always, I am Killingbird, here with my co-host Ron Fez. Buddy, how you doing, man?
I am good, KB. What's going on, buddy?
Not too much, just excited to be doing another podcast.
Yeah, 2 weeks this time. Not
I know.
Bad. Not bad.
People were chomping at the bit for the last one, and we took a little longer due to scheduling problems to get it out, but we finally did, but I'm glad we got this one out as quickly as we are. So.
Yeah, this should be a fun one too, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm anxious to it. Always fun to have Charlie and Ryan on, so should be fun.
Yep. So how is life in the world of Killingbird? What's going on with you?
Things have been good. Poker's has been good. I've been upswinging for nearly 2 months now, which is unheard of for me. So I'm hoping that'll continue. I just had another final table in the Midnight Madness like 2 or 3 nights ago.
That's a tough one that's tough to final table just because of the field size and because it happens so late that I punt to stack if I ever play that by 3 a.m. because I just don't want to.
Yeah. The funny thing was, I think actually on the last podcast, I think I mentioned something about multi-entrying the Midnight Madness, and you said that was just stupid and that I should never do that. And I agree, and I agreed then. But for some reason, I did it this time, and it ended up paying off. But it was one of those sessions where everything went wrong for the entire session, and then it got to the end, and I was just like wishing that I could go to bed.
Yeah, one tape on that's just madness.
Sometimes it's those tournaments or it's those nights where you end up having those scores, where it's like you feel like everything went wrong, and then all of a sudden you find yourself deep in your very last tournament of the night.
Yeah.
So.
Nice job.
Thank you, man. How's things with you?
Not bad. I actually haven't not played as much recently. I just had so many things with the day job going on, and TPEs kept me really busy. My wife has been getting a lot of freelance work, freelance graphic design work. She does she does websites, so I help her out with that occasionally. So volume has been down a little bit, but every time I play, I'm just donating right now, so it's actually kind of good. I did basically take 2 weeks off though to study, and not to study. I mean, took a week off just to clear my head, and then was traveling for like a week, and all I've done is watch videos and read and study, and I feel really great. I'm ready to just roll back into it. Feel like I'm getting better at hand reading and just thinking a little bit more. I love watching I'm obviously plugging our site, but Ween did a theory video on hand reading. I really enjoy watching Ryan's videos, HITTHEPANDA, because he's always talking about what people could potentially have.
Right.
And by doing that, I'm really I feel like getting a little bit better at it and, excited. I actually did make a real deep run in the 70K 3 nights ago. Just loaded up a couple, and I ended up taking 14th or something like that, which is really frustrating. But
yeah, that is frustrating.
Just keep plugging, and it was just a flip, it was one of those things, a flip for 50 big blinds, on the final table bubble. Which,
yeah. Well, I know last time we talked to you, you were talking about taking, a week off to just really study and stuff. So it sounds like that paid off, and
I think so. I think
fresh.
So. I feel good.
Sometimes a little time off and a break, especially if you can get some study in during it, is just what you need. So.
Yeah, and other thing I've been doing, I think I mentioned this last time too, is just playing less tables and concentrating on developing reads. I am enjoying the game a little bit more as well doing that. It just seemed to be better rather than just load everything up. So anyway.
Yeah. And you got a little live poker trip coming up, right?
I do. I'm going to be at Atlantic City, I think it's Caesars, for the World Series of Poker Circuit event. I'm only going to be able to make it for event number 1, the $300, $350 buy-in, which is on March 2nd. It's a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. But I know there are a couple of TPE members already planning to go down there, and we'll probably just get together a dinner break or something and meet up and do something fun, sort of all, bond.
Yeah, it was fun meeting people last time, and I really wish I could go. I wish I could go again, but my wife and I decided to book a cruise that we're actually not doing until April. But just that's obviously a financial commitment, and then I'm disappearing for almost 2 months for the World Series in Vegas. So, as a married guy with one child, disappearing for 2 months is a lot to ask. So,
I can't. I could not even imagine.
I couldn't bring myself to go ask for like another 3 or 4 days. So I just said, I'm just going to stay home.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be out there for 2 weeks of the World Series. So and that's a lot for a married guy. So I can imagine, you're not going to, it's more important for, obviously, as part of TPE and just in general, be out there for the World Series. So, skip the smaller things. I'll be at this one. If any TPE member wants to meet up, just I'll create a thread. I think there might be one already about it, but I'll either bump it or create a thread about next week's tournament, and we'll all meet up. And I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think Ween might be coming out too. I don't know if he's playing, but I think he might just come for dinner. So,
cool.
Or he might play. I don't even know. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Always good to see Ween.
Always good to see Ween.
Yep. Cool. So what do we got coming up on the show today?
Okay. So today, Hit the Panda, Ryan, Hit the Panda, and Charlie, Hagbard Celine will be joining us. And we have moved into, as you recall, if you listened to last week's episode, early Ante period. The 125, 250 to really, I think, 400, 800 blind level with Antes. Kind of in that range right now, I think. And we're talking more specifically about not short stack yet. I don't think we're into the resteal areas or shove areas. We're not ready for that type of conversation. Still relatively deep stacked, opening hands, early position ranges, and c-betting, which I think should be interesting to talk about because I believe there's been quite a bit of change in play over the past year in terms of c-betting bet sizing. So it should be interesting. And I know I've learned a lot from watching Ryan's latest videos on c-bet sizes and his theory on it. So, bringing these guys in to talk about it should be pretty fun.
Yeah, it's absolutely two of the biggest things that have changed in my game is how I'm opening, specifically the size of my opens and c-betting.
Yeah.
Size and also getting better with board textures and when to c-bet and when not to. Two things I've worked a lot on, so I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, I've always tried to be I've tried to be smart about c-betting, really read the board texture and say, well, that's going to hit his range, and so I'm not going to c-bet here. But from watching Big Dog's videos, I feel like I was probably, and watching Big Dog, talk about my c-betting deficiencies in the Stick It to the Man, I realized that I probably was too smart for my own good with that, where I was thinking, just leveling myself into not c-betting enough because of board textures. Now, there is obviously and definitely something to be said for board texture and number of opponents in the hand, and I'm not saying that you should discount it, but I think I was just being a little too conservative with c-betting, and I think I've probably fixed that leak. And it might be better to err on the side of too much because you could always slow down post, slow down if you get action. So I'm interested to see what these guys have to say about that. I know their styles might be a little bit different than Casey's, but I'm guessing that I was not c-betting enough in their eyes as well. So
right. Yep. I think it should be really cool.
Yep.
Well, right on. We'll go ahead and get those guys in here. So let's take a quick break, and we will be right back with the Tournament Poker Edge podcast.
Hey MTTers, this is Casey Big Dog Pocket Fives Jarzovic from TournamentPokerEdge.com. If you've been looking for a trading site dedicated exclusively to tournament poker, then look no further. Tournament Poker Edge is only $23.95 per month with no initial sign-up fee, and we post a new training video every weekday. You will also find poker-related articles, blogs, and very active strategy forums. We even offer you the ability to upload your own video for others to discuss. So head on over to TournamentPokerEdge.com and find out why it's quickly becoming the destination for tournament poker players looking to take their game to the next level. TournamentPokerEdge.com.
Welcome back to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. Time to bring in the TPE pros to talk a little strategy. So welcome to Hit the Panda and Hagbard Celine. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Hey, guys.
How are you?
Doing very well. How are things going for you guys? How's poker these days?
Pretty good, I guess. Yeah, not too bad. Getting through F-tops and
Yeah.
We should
things easy.
We should bring on whoever's on a hot streak, right? So that they're in a good mood about things.
I'm just trying to avoid bitching.
Yeah.
I'm in a good mood. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to bitch, even if things aren't going well. F-tops was fun. I played well and got a final table for once.
Well, your last video, didn't you? I think the video that just posted, you started the video with a final table at a turbo, right? With the
Yeah, I think that was a 200 turbo.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Start a session that way. Start a session with a second place. That's nice.
It was fun.
And Charlie, you just final tabled the early Stupor, right?
Last Friday got third.
Yep. Cool. For those who don't know, the Stupor stands for the Stars Super, which is a derivation of the party. What is the Party Super back in the days? The Party Poker Super. Which
Yeah, I think that's how it started there, and then there's the full tilt is the Fooper.
Yeah. Cool. Well, congratulations on that. Welcome to the show again. Cool. So, our topic today, strategy topic that we wanted to talk to you guys about was, moving into the early ante period. Last podcast, we talked to Big Dog and T-Twist, about shifting gears, and, we're sort of now, focusing on when the antes have been introduced, some of the smaller levels in that early ante period, the 250, the 300 big blind, the 400, 800, 300, 600, et cetera. And, just sort of how the game changes a little bit or how your strategy might change. And specifically today, we want to talk about, in early position, hands that, your hand ranges, what you'll open with. And, if we do open, c-betting. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening with c-betting, amongst at least the higher stakes tournaments I've been watching or playing. I think people have changed their c-bet sizes over the last year or so. So that's generally the topics we want to talk about today. So I guess let's start with you, Ryan. Let's just before we get into any specific hands, what goes through your mind when antes kick in? Is there? I mean, do you radically do you mentally does your mind shift change much, or what are you thinking once we enter the ante period? Are you going to start attacking immediately, or are we still? We're usually not that short stacked yet, but I guess what happens when we start transition into the ante period for you?
Well, it kind of depends on how I've been playing up till that point, but
Right.
for the most part, I'm gonna usually start opening more hands and kind of see how the table's playing. And if I had been, taking away stuff pretty easily up till that point and the table's not doing anything to play back at me, I'll just keep opening from all positions and
Right.
just try and keep stealing pots until someone does something.
Are you able to apply that even when you're mass tabling? Like, I mean, how many tables do you usually play at one time?
I mean, it depends what day it is, but usually up to 15, I guess. I try and keep it less than that.
Right.
But yeah, usually if any table I'm playing, I try and play, optimally and as many hands as I feel is profitable.
Right. Okay. And Charlie, what about you? Is it generally the same, or is there anything?
Yeah, I think Brian makes a good point. I try to, as much as possible, tailor my play to the table. How the table's playing. If I have a lot of active players on my left, good players, then I'm probably going to be opening a bit less. But if the table's just sort of letting me open at will, then I'm going to continue opening until they stop me. Main thing I notice when the antes kick in is just that the pre-flop pot's a lot bigger. There's like an extra big blind in the pot. So in general, I'm going to be trying to steal pre-flop a lot more.
And what about from early position? Does your opening range, increase, decrease, or stay the same? Considering that we probably have some people now who, even if your stack is okay, let's say you're 40, 50 big blinds deep as antes introduced, or 30 even, considering that there are going to be some people who are shorter stacked, does your early position range tighten up a little bit, or does that not matter?
I mean, if there are some short stacks, then I probably am not going to be opening too many hands that are going to have just like really, really awful equity against them if and when they shove. But in general, I'd say that my early position opening range when the antes kick in is going to be a little bit wider than when there's no antes, but it's not going to open up like really dramatically. I wouldn't say. I'm still going to open roughly the same range of hands.
Right, and I guess from early position, you're not opening a ton anyway. Deep. In most cases, you're not
a ton. And definitely a bit like I'm going to be adding some hands in there so that it isn't like so transparently strong.
Right.
I think something that you should keep in mind with antes in and early position raises a lot is game flow and paying attention to your image and whether or not you've raised for an orbit or two and then opening for early position with maybe something like Jack 10 offsuit or 5-4 suited, after you haven't really done anything, or even something like 9-10 offsuit, as long as there's antes in the pot, as long as it works,
right?
45% of the time or whatever, it's going to be profitable. And then if you have a hand like 9-10 where you're going to be getting flatted, since you're raising for early position by a pretty well-defined range of broadways that are better than you, and then maybe worse pairs like 8s or 7s, and your equity is pretty decent versus that range anyway, even if you do get flatted and you're from early position. So you can steal pre-flop as well as represent a pretty strong range post-flop and maybe turn like a hand like 9-10 or 8-7 offsuit that you're going to get credit for pre-flop into a multi-street bluff post-flop.
And what stack size does that weapon leave your arsenal? Like, when do you stop doing things like that?
if I have a 25 big blind stack and I'm blinding down and I haven't done anything for 2 orbits or something like that, or even 1 orbit, and it folds to me on the hijack and I have 18 or 19 big blinds with 5-6 offsuit, I can open that for a min raise. And just because you're in the hijack or even at middle position, people are going to be folding a tight enough range where the amount of times where they can have a hand where they're going to be able to get it in versus you is going to be not enough of the time to where you take down the pot and scoop the antes, etc., and add to your stack.
Cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people I think they underestimate how much you can raise fold with a shorter stack, especially probably more in the mid stakes or smaller stakes where people don't really react to it, and they're just going to assume that you're raise calling most of the time, unless you're just doing it over and over, but you have to be smart about it and do it, in good spots where you're going to get respect.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Cool.
And I think too many people, just on that note, are shoving too much of their stacks in late position, like 22 big blinds on the cutoff, instead of min raising like queen jack offsuit with 21 big blinds instead of just open shoving it, I think is better.
Right. All right. Okay. What about c betting then? So, we do open, let's just assume we've opened from relatively early position, and a lot of the hands talk about this, but I just want to get your, just your theoretical thoughts on this. You open from relatively early position, and doesn't matter if you hit. I don't know. It doesn't matter if we hit or not. What I've seen is just over the last year, c-bet size. First was the open sizing changed dramatically, I think, last year sometime. But this year I've seen c-betting sizes have changed dramatically. It's become much smaller c-bet sizes than we used to see, where I think a lot of c-bets, even from the videos I've watched of you guys are c-betting in many cases less than 50% of the pot, which, back 2 years ago, most people were betting 2/3 of the pot, c-betting 2/3 of the pot. So can you guys, talk if you believe that's true, and if it is, why that's right or not right?
I think a lot of good players realize that on certain types of flops, like really dry flops, paired board and stuff, it's really unnecessary to bet so much. Basically is I think the reason why you're seeing some of those really small c-bet sizes.
So basically, a smaller bet accomplishes the same thing a larger bet.
Exactly.
Almost all the time.
A lot of it is texture and stack size as well. I mean, if you can bet a small enough bet, even a 1/3 pot bet on the flop, and still be able to get the stacks on the river, and it'll apply the same amount of pressure as a half pot bet. If you have a balanced range, then it's definitely the better option. Right.
And what talk about the texture of the flop a little bit. So let's say, we bet, 8s or something and we whiff, what are we doing on a ace queen X double suit board compared to, king 4-2 with no suited. Like, are we betting differently there?
It's still somewhat same texture, but just because it's ace high board it depends on whether someone's going to call second pair.
Right.
Just because there's a flush draw, it doesn't make that many more combos possible.
You know what? Let's change that to like Jack 10. Jack 10.
Yeah. When you talk about that, like a Jack 10 with one suited is a huge difference. Where just usually if someone's calling a tighter, not even a tight, but just like a normal calling range pre-flop, then most of the range is either gonna continue on that flop or just fold. So, the range that's going to continue is going to continue to a half pot bet, and they're going to continue to a 2/3 pot bet because of implied odds, whatever. They're not going to fold a draw. So on those types of boards, you want to bet a bit bigger than normal because you want to charge the draws, obviously.
Right. And then on dry boards, we can bet smaller because we're not so worried about them continuing. Would you say that's correct?
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that's an important concept, and I think a lot of our members may get that, but if not, it's probably one of those revelation points where you could really improve your game and plug up the league.
I really do think bet sizing. If you're making too big of bets, it kind of just inhibits you from doing much. And if you're opening pretty wide and playing a lot of pots and you're doing small bet size, it's going to give you a lot more flexibility for spots where you can take down a lot of pots with c-bets, especially at the mid stakes and small stakes where people are just going to defend a lot, and you can have a small c-bet range and they're not going to adjust to it whatsoever.
Well, what about,
like you were saying, if you're opening a really wide range of hands, you're going to be missing the flop a lot.
Yeah.
So you're going to be getting a better price on all your bluffs.
And doesn't it give you a smaller bet, give you more ability to double barrel? Because from what I'm seeing as well, people are calling, people are floating more often, so you have to start double barreling more often.
Right.
And a smaller bet gives you the ability to do that without committing yourself in many cases still. Is that?
Yeah, and also in a lot of spots where you're raising and maybe the big blind defends like a 20 to 40 big blind, or not 20 to 40, like maybe 20 to 35 big blind stack, where a lot of times if you make a half pot to 2/3 pot c-bet on, type of texture, they may just feel like they should shove over your c-bet. And a lot of spots where if someone defends that, because, everyone plays tournaments, and even though you're not supposed to defend as much, there's still tons of people who defend tons in the big blind to either your min raise when the antes are in, and when they do that, it gives them really less incentive to be able to come over a smaller c-bet as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And can you guys talk a little bit about your open sizes from early position too? I know Ryan, you've mentioned several times already in the conversation about min raising, and one thing you've drilled into my head a few times is that if you're doing anything more than min raising, it's too much. And I think I finally started to listen to that. So I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts on, why the min raise and what it allows you to do.
Well,
post flop.
Recently I still min raise, but I think as I get up to like 40 plus big blinds, even post ante, I make it a little bit bigger nowadays at the better tables, just because people really can defend pretty wide in the blinds to a min raise, and you just want to maybe decrease that incentive a little bit to a good player who's going to be able to play, pretty well out of position. But I think it's really, really good when it comes to like the mid to low to whatever stakes, anything where you're not going to have a bunch of regulars at every table, and people are just not going to be, they're going to be defending, maybe more at those stakes, but they're not going to be defending properly and playing well post flop, which is good for you. And that means you can open more pots where people are just going to flat and not 3-bet you late. And then you can see flops and then make good decisions post-flop.
Right. Yeah, it's one thing that I've had conversations with other low and mid-stakes players about is you talk to them about min-raising, they say, but aren't you just basically begging the big blind to call? But that's not always a bad thing, because like you said,
that's almost always a good thing.
Yeah,
and I can remember thinking, like, man, I don't want these people to call me. I don't want to have to figure out what's going on post-flop. I don't want to try and put this guy in a range because he's playing so crazy. But, you don't have to really put someone on, a hand. You can just say, this guy's defending in the big blind and I'm opening wide. He's going to be defending a gigantic range of hands that are just not going to be able to continue, even even if he calls the flop, they're just not going to be able to continue throughout the hand most of the time. And especially if you are paying attention to the table and can get a read that some players are calling 2 streets and making it very obvious that they'll fold to a 3rd street if you shove and stuff like that, where they're just going to always call 2nd pair, and then if you double barrel, they're always going to fold. And so it's random stuff like that. It's just the more you pay attention to the table, you can really get players' tendencies when you're trying to min raise and play so many pots. And when you play this many pots, people are going to try and do something to make sure that you can't do that, because you're obviously getting into the pot before they can. And then if you play better than them and are thinking better than them, then obviously when they try and outplay you, it's not going to happen, and their hands are going to get turned pretty face up usually.
Right.
What about the fact, though, that if we do min raise from early position, it's great if the blinds come along because we have position on them, and obviously all things being equal, position will give us an edge. But we could get flatted more often by people in late position, especially astute people who realize they're going to have position on us.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And like I said, I think it's really not a concern at all if you're 40 big blinds and under when there's antes in. I mean, you're not really going to get flatted any more so than normal because of a min raise. But as you get past that point and start getting a deeper stack, I'm definitely okay with starting to increase the raise size a little bit. But I don't think I would really, once the antes are in, I think going over maybe 2.3x, unless the whole table is pretty deep stacked, you could go up to 2.5x. But I think, in normal tournaments where there's really not many more stacks that are bigger than 50 to 60 big blinds, it's okay to go 2.3 to 2.4x max.
Okay, and here's a question I have, and this actually might not be something you guys want to answer because it's very specific about your game, but when I posted some videos with Stick It to the Man series where one thing that was clear was that I wasn't c-betting enough, and I think I probably became too cognizant of flop textures where I was just oh well, that hits his range so hard I'm not gonna bet here, and I probably was just according to Big Dog, I definitely wasn't c-betting enough, and I think I've definitely fixed that. My attitude has sort of shifted to, hey, I got called, no problem, I'm gonna c-bet and take this down most of the time, whereas it used to be, hey, I'm kind of I'll see what I'm smart enough to know the flop texture and not c-bet because it hits his range, but that change has shifted. So the question is, are you guys almost always just c-betting regardless of the flop texture? I mean, not 100% obviously, but do we just assume that if we're opening, especially from early position, we assume that our strategy has to include a c-bet, or is that too general of a statement?
I think it's probably a little too general.
Yeah, I think it's. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna say. I mean, my c-betting is based almost, I want to say, almost entirely on texture. I'm usually just looking at the flop and thinking to myself, what kind of hands. For example, if I open from mid to late position and the big blind calls, I'm looking at the flop and thinking to myself, what kind of hands is he calling with? Can I profitably c-bet here?
I think something to keep in mind is when you get in these situations where you're raising a lot in late position and getting into a lot of pots where people are, the button's flatting a lot or the blinds are flatting a lot, where it's just going to be really obvious that your c-bets are getting or air a lot of the time, and you can start mixing in, when both of your ranges are going to be pretty wide and both that really, you can mix in checking back top pair with weak kickers and then checking back some air. And if you have shown down previously that you checked down, a top pair type of hand, that you took some kind of pot control line, people are just going to auto check to you on the turn, and then you can fire a delayed c-bet. And that's something that kind of comes into more of a game flow type of thing. But, readless and playing against randoms, most of the time you're going to want to have a high percentage c-bet, probably over, I'd say at least over 75%.
Yeah, one thing I've started to try to convince myself of is that the minute I don't c-bet, I'm basically giving him the pot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, well, if you feel that way, you definitely need to balance your checking back range. You shouldn't always be checking back nothing. I mean, there's some percentage of the time where you can even check back top set. It's just you shouldn't be doing it most of the time, but you should never be playing the same hand every single time the same way. You definitely want to, even if you, for example, say you open the cutoff and you have a bad image, and then the big blind calls, and then you bet an ace high board with ace queen, and then you can like check back the turn and then maybe overbet the river. If it bricks off, if you think maybe he has an ace and you're not going to get 3 streets, maybe you want to get 2 streets where the second street is an overbet, and then you can start doing that as a bluff, and people are going to be like, okay, he always has, X hand that's better than me, and it's just, other ways to think about playing different types of hands. You should try and be doing that at the table.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really excellent point. Like your baseline strategy, probably like read lists, you just get moved to a table and you're opening a lot of pots, is going to be c-betting a really high percentage. But as time goes on and people start catching on that you're raising a lot and c-betting a lot, you're going to have to start mixing it up and not playing so transparently. You're going to have to start checking back flops, not only with your air, but with like all types of hands, like Ryan was saying, like weaker top pair hands, middle pair, even really strong hands sometimes. Yeah, I think that's a really solid point.
All right, cool guys. Good conversation there and interesting stuff. Well, why don't we take this topic and move into some hands and talk about it in more detail with specifics. So as we've mentioned before, a lot of these hands all these hands are available for viewing that we're going to talk about now are available for viewing at tournamentpokeredge.com/podcasts. You can go there, and next to the link for this podcast, there'll be a link to the hand histories, because we know it's kind of hard to sometimes follow along multi-street action on a podcast. If you're at a computer, that could help you guys. We have a couple of hands here that represent early position opens in the early ante period and c-betting, the topics that we've been talking about so far. We have a couple from TPE members, and we have 1 or 2 from me, and of course Derek has swiftly avoided criticism once again by not providing any hands for the pros to review, maintaining his image as a good player. And
you know how I roll.
So hopefully we can look at Derek's hands next week. But we have a couple of good ones, I think, to talk about. So let's start.
I'm such a nit that I never see bet.
Yeah.
I just ship aces. The only hands I play. So
all right. So next week's topic will be shipping aces. Okay. So hand number 1, once again posted online. Hand number 1 is a PokerStars $10 tournament, and here we are at the 300, 600 level with our hero actually having quite a big stack. This is, I'll give you some details. He actually posts some information in the thread. He's under the gun +1, blinds, like I said, 300, 600. He has 60K, which gives him about exactly 100 big blinds. So, rather large stack. And he has these queens under the gun +1. And so at 300, 600, it folds to him. He raises to 1277. So first off, here we are under the gun, very deep stack. He basically min raises. Does anyone have a problem with that? Are we okay with the sizing, in line with what we've been talking about so far? Do we want to make it a little bigger? Yeah.
If you look at the stacks of the other stacks of the table, like specifically the small blind, big blind, they both have 30 bigs. So,
right.
I think.
So basically accomplishes the same thing as we kind of talked about. Okay. So MP1 raises to 2,400. So a very small 3-bet, and it folds back to him. So let's give you a little information here before we decide what we think is best to do.
I'd move up to where they respect your raises.
Okay. So here's some information he gives us. MP1 had only been at the table 4 or so hands, so he has no read. He's second in chips with approximately 400 left, and he also says I'm trying not to be results oriented, so I don't know what that means, but I don't know.
That means he ran into aces.
Yeah, exactly. I don't.
Or he's being results oriented because he got 5-bet.
Yeah, or I don't know if he's trying to make a correlation between his chip stack as opposed, maybe he means I'm trying not to, try not to think about my, how good I am so far with 400 left. I don't know. Some people think about that at times too. Okay, so that's his read on MP1. So it gets back to you with the queens.
Oh wait, how many hands? He said he's just got moved here.
Just got moved here.
I mean, it can't be much. You don't really have any reads. I mean, this is readless.
No reads. This is completely readless, right? Just going to you guys know.
I mean, it seems to me like this is just a clear flat. It kind of sucks because you got min 3-bet, but at the same time, I mean, when you think about 4-betting, what are you really accomplishing? You're gonna put a lot of pressure on him to fold worse pairs, which is a disaster. And just you're going to be getting all the chips in against a really tight range that you may not even be ahead of. So
right. And one thing to mention is actually the guy who 3-bets us also has a pretty deep stack. He has 32K, which is 53 big blinds. So didn't mention that, but that's also I think relevant here.
Oh, it's definitely relevant because if he had like 20, 30 big blinds, I think I'd just get it in. But
right. Okay. Ryan, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, readless, it's fine to fly it. Give them incentive. Most of the time they're either going to have aces or just a really random crappy hand that they'll probably put a good amount of money into the pot to post swap with.
Right. Okay. I think here's where, the player in this hand makes the mistake, is because he goes and he makes it, instead of just calling like you guys suggested, he makes it 6,200. So he raises a little over 4-bets a little over 2x. And so, why is this a big mistake? I guess it's a good question to ask you guys.
I mean, first of all, if I was like really paying attention to this tournament and pretty pumped, I have a big stack and trying to get to the finish, I would probably pull this guy up on either OPR or Bluff database and just see like what kind of a player he is, and if he's like a really losing player, I might change how I play and be more willing to just stack off. But I think just 4-betting really, it never looks light, and especially when he makes it so big, like over 2.5x 4-bet, it just never looks light, and you're really just hoping that he decided to 2x 3-bet you, and now he's going to flat with his crappy hand instead of, the only hand that's really 5-betting you is going to be aces or kings, or, it's never ace-king either, so you don't even have that going for you.
Right. I guess to Charlie's point, this just folds out better hands and gives, folds out worse hands and gives better hands the ability to get it all in.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's the point of showing that, and I think a lot of people still make that mistake, but it's a really important concept to keep in mind. Okay. So he does go to 6,200, and then MP1 shoves 32K. And so he's a little confused here. And let me read you his thinking before you guys, recommend what to do. Although I think we got a sense for what you're going to say. He goes, I thought the min 3-bet then shove looked very strong versus an EP raise and 4-bet. I think check on that, right? He goes, I think I'm needing 40%, and if his range to 5-bet AI here is ultra tight, then I am right on it. Not sure. Maybe I don't know.
His percent versus aces and kings isn't looking too good.
It's not 40%. It's not 40%. If you're putting in ace king, perhaps.
I remember
I would never put in ace king. I think that's a mistake.
I did the math. Yeah, I did the math on this in the thread, and if you add ace king, you barely have the equity to call. And I said he might not even be doing this with ace king. And I think Ryan's right. He probably isn't doing this with ace king.
Yeah, it actually is exactly 40% versus ace king. Kings plus, but to your point, no one thinks he's doing this with ace king.
Yeah, and just the main point of it in the first place is
don't
get into this spot.
Right, shouldn't be getting into this spot, right? Okay,
well, yeah, you should never really not just this spot, exactly, but in general, you should never ever be 4-betting queens in any spot, and then have to actually think about the 5-bet shove. It should be a snap call, or you should have flatted the 3-bet or folded pre.
Yep. I think that's a invaluable piece of advice. I think anyone who doesn't realize that really, it's obvious once you realize that, but if you don't, as this poster didn't really understand it, it'll plug up a huge leak, I think, once you figure that out.
And also, just in general, out of position with a hand that is strong but may not be ahead of somebody's 4-betting or 5-betting range.
Right.
You might want to think twice about reopening the betting.
Yep.
Yeah, all you crazy kids with ace queen.
Flat calling is a viable option in those situations.
So do we just give up here? We made a mistake with the 4-bet. We just got to fold here, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I would fold.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't fold, but you should. But I would definitely flat though the first time. I would just be like, wow, this guy has aces. I hope to God that there's just an ace or king on the flop.
Yep. Okay.
Because I probably am not folding post flop.
Right.
I mean, I think in that situation though, like for real though, I mean, after you do flat, it's really, really, it can really help you. Like, I mean, in this spot, you're facing a decision, by the river. It's 30K chips that he has. If you have, I really recommend the Bluff DB subscription because it shows you the average finish of what it shows their stats like OPR, but it also shows the villain's average finish. And people with a higher average finish here, I would much more likely to, stack off post flop and assume that they're just more spewy, and especially if they're losing players. So I think that's something that you can invest in as a player and help you while you're multi-tabling.
That's interesting. Okay, cool. All right, so I think our takeaway here is don't play a big pot like this with and fold out the hands that you beat and give better hands an opportunity to come over you. So good. Okay. I don't know what he actually did here. He doesn't tell us, I don't think. But I think we took away what we need to take away there.
Yep.
Okay,
Cool.
So let's move on to the next hand. This is hand number 2 on the podcast hand list, and we are playing a full tilt tournament. Not sure of the buy-in, doesn't state, but blinds are 300, 600. We are 8-handed at this table for some reason. Once again, doesn't state that, state why, but we have 7s in MP1. Our hero here has 59.7K. So once again, early ante period, but very deep stacked early ante period, nearly 100 big blinds. And so at 300, 600 with 7s at MP1, it folds to the hero and he makes it 1200. So min raise, we look at the rest of the stacks to, Charlie's point earlier, most stacks here aren't that big either, so we're probably assuming a min raise is good here. Applies the same leverage with his 7s, and he gets called by the cutoff, and then everyone else folds. So we go to a flop.
And just to know the cutoff, he gives the cutoff stats. He's playing 68-38 over 50 hands.
Oh, very good point. And the cutoff actually has him covered. He has a huge stack as well. So we get into a hand here with the other big stack at the table. And good point. So this guy's playing a ton of hands. So we go to a flop. There's 3K in the flop now. And the flop is ace of spades, queen of spades, 6 of hearts. So we got 2 spades on board, two Broadway cards, and hero is first to act. So are we going to be automatically c-betting now because we're the pre-flop aggressor? Do we look at this board texture and maybe decide not to? And if we do c-bet, what kind of size do you recommend here?
I think go either way. I see the merits in c-betting an ace-high flop like this. We're representing that we raised with an ace and flop top pair and are continuing to bet. I think his bet size is pretty fine. But I could also, being out of position against a player as active as this, who's probably gonna be floating a decent amount, calling with not an ace but better than a 7 often enough, and with hands that have good equity against us, I can see just check folding as well.
I mean, I think the fact that you both are so deep and the fact that he's calling every single pair and probably a lot of suited connectors makes this a pretty easy bet, and then if he calls, give it up.
Right. So we take a stab and just give up. Possibly. I mean, it sounds like it's pretty close either way. I don't think you guys would have a problem either way. A big problem, it sounds like, either way.
Yeah, I mean, if he's flatting like way too wide, where he's flatting like every Broadway, and like even like once he shouldn't, like unsuited like King 10 and like Queen 10, like all that kind of crap, where he's always going to call second pair and you don't know if he's going to fold to another barrel, then you can just fold. But I think just ace high boards in general versus people who flat 68 or 38, there's just way too many hands that are going to snap fold to a c-bet here to give up, I think.
Okay, and what size would you go with, Ryan, if you did c-bet here?
I think his sizing's okay with how
That's
deep they are. 1800 is
Okay,
pretty
yeah.
good.
That's what he goes. So he goes 1800 into the 3K pot, and the guy calls him. So we're going to a turn now. So once again, very deep stack, both of them. We go to a turn with 6600 in the pot. The turn is 3 of clubs, so it gives us a queen of spades, 6 of hearts, 3 of clubs. Probably doesn't change much. The turn probably doesn't change much, and now it's up to our hero again. Do we want to take another stab here, or did we just decide to give up because we don't think this guy's folding?
I would check fold for sure. I mean, he either has a better pair than us, or even his floats have good equity against us. I don't think, even when we have the best hand, we're not, he's going to have decent equity against us, and we're not going to be able to play all that well being out of position.
Right.
Yeah, he's never folding the turn. I mean, he might fold a queen, but
right.
He's probably just going to call, and then you can't really barrel the river because he's probably going to call that too.
Right, and we're so deep that whatever we bet still isn't have enough leverage on the stack, right? So it's not like we can really apply pressure yet on the turn.
Well, I think if you really wanted to do something awesome here, and maybe I would only recommend this if you had some kind of image where you didn't really shoot down any bluffs, and where maybe you had a tighter raising range, would be to barrel this turn, then maybe like pot or overbet the river, just because I think he probably has depending on the river, if it was a spade, I wouldn't, but if it was like, another blank, I could see a bet on the turn and then overbetting the river and then getting him to fold.
Right.
A lot of his, ace jack, ace 10 maybe, if you think he's even capable of that, but I wouldn't do that, read this.
Right. And you wouldn't even get in this situation, well, I mean,
yeah,
I guess you could.
I mean, like, it's a Gameflow. If I think there's a spot where I can bet the turn here because he has a weak range, and then if I get a blank river where I know his range is going to consist of, he probably raises ace queen on the flop, so it's mostly one pair type hands or a missed draw, I can overbet the river with value hands as well as a hand like 7-7 here. But I'd rather do it with a hand like jack 10 or something with like some kind of gut shot for equity.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. Cool.
But you shouldn't do stuff like that, when you don't have any type of read or reason to do so, because it's most likely going to be spew.
Right. Okay. Well, he does bet. He does lead into the turn, and he bets 3K into the 6,600, and the guy calls again. And so now we're going to the river with a 12.6K pot, a 5 of diamonds, which, ace, queen, 6, 3, 5 board. No flushes hit. And, I know we're probably by this point where most of us have been done with the hand, but he leads, 7,200 and he gets raised. So, obviously we're folding here now. But, should we have taken a stab at this river, or is this just, once again, give up?
I think something important to note is that he bet 3K into 6,600 on the turn, and if you're really trying to plan any type of bluff here, it's much better to try and at least be credible with it and represent that you actually have a hand. I mean, when you have ace queen or aces or whatever, especially with the flush draw, you're never betting 3K into 6,600 on the turn.
Right.
When you guys are over 100 big blinds to start the hand.
And there's a flush draw out there.
Yeah, and then betting 7,200 into 12,600 on the river is just not going to be anywhere near enough to get him to fold, his most likely ace.
I think like what Ryan was talking about on the turn, if you are, which you shouldn't be doing readless, and but trying to get him to fold like a weakish ace, then you want to be betting bigger on the turn and then big on the river.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, I don't even know if the river bet is enough to get him to fold some queens.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty weak to me.
I mean, just looking at his pre-flop stats, I wouldn't really expect him to be folding much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just thinking this guy is not thinking.
Yeah, like when you get in this type of table, I mean, you don't need to be doing 3-barrel bluffs. That's going to be pretty anti-productive to what you should be trying to do to chip up at a table where you think players are playing this loose. I mean, they're making the mistake already, so don't take a high variance approach and try and make them fold when you can just exploit the mistake that they're already making by playing 68% of hands pre-flop.
Right. Right. So I think what we're taking away from here is, c-betting or checking marginal either direction. I think most of us here are advocating based on this texture and this player, just check folding. But it's not a huge mistake to make a c-bet here. But we got to realize who we're playing against and his range, and the fact that he's rarely folding. And unless we're willing to really credibly present a big hand, we'll probably just want to shut down at this point. I think that's what we're taking away from this.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's move on to the next hand, because I think it's kind of similar, not 100%, but I think we'll see what we think about this. This is one I played.
I recognize this fish's screen name.
I'm pretty sure I've taken you out in tournaments before, so you watch your step, buddy.
Oh, snap.
I run so good against you, Diego.
I know you do. You actually do, and it's...
I do. No, I'm not
so
kidding.
frustrating. How many times have you had to, I am sorry, man. Sorry, man.
How many times have we ever played together?
Yeah, especially at final tables, right? All right, so you're not at this table, so I have a chance. This is the FTP 28K, $26 at 10 p.m. Eastern, which is now multi-entry. And I am under the gun with 51 big blinds. We're at 200, 400 blinds. I have 20K, approximately 20K, so I have approximately 50 big blinds. And I have eights. So now, first off, looking at the table stacks, there's really a mix here. There's some bigger stacks, there's some smaller stacks. There's no predominant stack sizes. The blinds, the small blind has 30 bigs, and the big blind has 28 bigs. First of all, with my hand, with eights, I open them and I go to 800. At what stack size should I just start folding eights under the gun? Are we looking at 20 big blinds, 25 big blinds, 30?
Never.
Never. So, I mean, if I have 20 big blinds, big blinds, should I just open and then fold eights here, or
20 big blinds?
Yeah.
Just open, see what happens.
Open and fold.
I mean, most of the time, raise fold for the most part.
Right. And then once my stack gets smaller, we're just shoving them under the gun. Right. I mean, obviously, if we get to 10 or 12 big blinds. So at some point you don't want to open fours with 20 big blinds, do you? Or what's
you can fold fours.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's what I'm getting at. There's a certain point where, once again, I think a common mistake is there's a certain point where you don't have to play all your pairs, at a certain stack size where, you have to give up too easily. If you're going to fold to a shove, it's really detrimental to your stack size. But here, that's not the case. I have 50 bigs, so we can obviously go with it, and I do. It folds to the big blind, who has 30 bigs. He has approximately 12K, and he calls, and as does the big blind. So I get two callers, but I am in position. The flop, so we go to the flop. The flop, there's 28.50 in the pot. The flop comes ace of diamonds, 5 of clubs, king of hearts. And both of these guys check to me. And so now I'm thinking here, I mean, it is three-handed, but I'm thinking that ace-king has got to look good for my range. It doesn't look good for their ranges. It's different than the last hand because the board isn't suited, but probably not radically different. But given my perceived range and their ranges, we're thinking a c-bet here is pretty good, right?
Yeah, I'd see bet here. I mean, it's really dry, and you're gonna look strong betting into two people.
Right. Okay. And I think that's standard for most. But I guess my question here now is, what's your bet size? What's a good bet size here?
Not a lot. Something like.
I like that bet size.
I'm gonna type that in next time.
Even 1,200.
Right.
1185.
So, going back to our earlier conversation, and this is why I selected this hand.
Hold on, real quick. What do you think about 1255, Charlie?
I think you're borderline wasting chips.
Okay, all right. I was just checking.
It goes back to our earlier conversation because
No, honestly, I think I'd bet 1244.
1240.
I mean, I usually don't like those using two numbers in the same, 4-4. It kind of just makes it look like you don't know what you're doing.
You think so?
I mean,
unless it's a 9-9.
I think it doesn't scare people. I think they just.
I end every bet with whatever number it is.
I think if you're going to do 44 every time and then, start typing in all caps at the table that you have a 44 handgun, maybe, that would provide enough fear.
Okay, so going back to the earlier topic of conversation. So we don't need to bet a lot here, and that's the point of bringing this hand up is we don't need to bet 2K or 19K, and I think that has changed a lot in the past couple of years. I think most people would have bet like 1,800 here or something 2 years ago, but like you said, I think Ryan said earlier, a lot of good players have realized that a smaller bet accomplishes the same thing with less risk. So I'm still adjusting to that, and I go to 1,400, which I thought was I'm going 50%. Which I'm adjusting now.
You can honestly make it like 1,000 here, and it's pretty legit.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's great to know, especially since if I get called and I want to rep something on the turn, or just rep that I hit the flop, it'll be cheaper for me to do that on the turn as well, right?
I mean, think about it. Like the small blind, for example, is in a pretty tough spot here when you bet with like king queen or king jack. It's like not really all that pretty for him.
Right.
With you betting into two people and the big blind left to act.
Right.
Yeah, like if you can have, in this spot, this is one of those kind of game flow type things where if you've been playing at the table for a while and you just know that if you bet here and then the guy that called in the big blind is calling with a king every time, and then he's going to have a bunch of weak aces, and then he'll give you credit since you're under the gun. You can bet, whatever it is to set up a pot side shove on the river, which is probably like 2K or something, and he can, snap fold every one of his kings, and if that's going to be, half of his range, and then you bet 2K into 5,600 on the turn, then it's going to be a pretty profitable bet, as well as the fact that he can maybe hero fold an ace on the turn, and if not, you can also shove the river when his range is going to be pretty capped, and he's not going to feel great about calling, any street really. But that's another thing where if you try and do that when you just get moved to the table and then you get snap called all three streets, it's not a good idea.
Right.
Would you guys agree that you can c-bet a little smaller because there are two players in the hand with you, and it sort of adds extra pressure to the guy kind of stuck in the middle? Like you're going to get maybe a little more a few more folds against him because he doesn't know what's going to happen behind him?
I don't think necessarily. I think it's more so just because of the size of the pot and the size of the players' stacks left, and the fact that they don't really. This is a good board for us, and not really so much for them most of the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean,
Right.
somewhat to that degree. I mean, I think a lot of time people will still call king anyway, even if there's a guy left to axe.
Right.
Okay.
So I bet 1,400, and the small blind folds, but the big blind does call the 1,400 bet. So we're going to a turn here. In my mind, I'm thinking it's probably, like you said, probably a king. That's what I'm guessing. And the turn is four of spades. So now we have an ace of diamonds, 5 of clubs, king of hearts, 4 of spades. The pot is 56-50, and it is checked to me. This player has about 9K left. I have a lot more chips. Do we want to barrel this turn, or are we just going to try to either shut down or see a showdown cheaply? And Ryan was, thinking about some ways we could bluff here.
I think readless. I would just give up.
I think it's best just to give up most of the time.
Okay.
I mean, you're operating on the fact that the c-bet's going to be profitable because of their ranges and the size of the pot and the size of your c-bet. So if they get called, then just, it's the percentage of the time that they have a hand, and you can just give up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I that's basically the mode I go into, and then the river is a 9 of clubs, so no flushes or anything. Not sure if that changes much with the hands. I don't think it does. And he checks to me, and I just check back. and I believe he had a king. So, looking here, yeah, he had a king. So I think, basically slightly different than the previous hand, but I think put that out there as juxtaposition to the previous hand as well.
Yeah, and you lost a lot fewer chips.
Right.
Than the guy on the other hand.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Cool. Next hand.
Yeah, this is a hand from one of our forum members. It is a tournament on PokerStars. We were at 1,000 blinds, and we're in MP1. Stack size wise, we're sitting on 45 big blinds. We have about 45K. Folds to us again in MP1. And our hero makes it 23.95, so almost 2.5x with the ace queen of diamonds. What do you guys think of the raise size, first of all? Could be a little smaller, perhaps?
I mean, it's fine. I personally make it a little bit smaller, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. We get one caller and then 4 folds, so we go heads up to the flop. With 71.90 in the pot. The flop is 5 of diamonds, king of diamonds, 5 of spades, so 2 5s and a king. We obviously flop a flush draw. What are your thoughts as far as c-betting this flop?
I mean, I definitely c-bet it. I wouldn't bet that big, though. It's one of those very dry texture flops where he's not going to hit it very often at all.
Yeah.
So I would bet less than half pot here.
Okay, yeah, our hero makes it 36.95. Charlie, you agree that should be a little smaller?
Yeah, I mean, paired boards are like I think, a perfect example of the type of flop where you can go pretty small.
Right, and you're looking at it, it's suited, but like a lot of people are like, well, it's suited, so I want to kill the draws, but he's got the best
Yeah,
draw
the
here.
nut flush draw.
You got the nut flush draw, so there's way less chance of him having diamonds.
Yeah. Okay. So our hero bets 36.
There's no jack in there. I mean, there's no queen. All these hands he, could be flatting us with.
Right. So our hero bets 36.95, and the villain raises to 84.35. So, a bit more than a min raise. What are your guys' thoughts? Facing this raise where we obviously have the nut flush draw. Perhaps maybe an over.
I mean, I would flat. I
Yeah,
don't really see getting it in. I think if it was maybe Jack 5-5, I could get it in, but I don't really expect him to be, readless. I think you can't really assume he's just going to be bluffing this type of flop all the time. So I would just flat, see what he does on the turn.
Okay. Charlie, you sounds like you agree.
Yeah, I agree. When I originally looked at it, I think with history, I was thinking with history, I think 3-betting flops like this can be really effective, but readless, I agree with Ryan.
It totally changes if it's readless, and then if you have not even a history, even if you've just been opening wide and you feel like, this guy's flatting you wider. You have to have something like he's flatting wider than normal, or
you know what? There's actually information in the thread, so let me read this to you. The villain was running 40-27 over 82 hands with a 2.1 aggression factor, but he says I hadn't seen him get too out of line post flop.
And what about how is the villain playing?
That's the villain. He doesn't say anything about himself.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's kind of important to know how Hero had been playing over those 82 hands, and the previous pots that they had been in would definitely, if there was any type of aggression or any type, anything that would lead me to believe that this guy is, not raising a 5 or not raising a king or a flush draw, or, I mean, if I thought he was just, air or flush draw here and he was flatting most of his kings, then I would definitely just get in it on the flop, but, if I hadn't really done anything with that player up till this point, and then suddenly he's check raising me, then unless he was check raising other people a ton, then I would just flat.
And we're deep enough here, both of our stacks, that we can flat here and just see a turn and give up if we don't hit. Is that the plan? Are we seeing one card, or are we?
It depends. I mean,
I
for the
think-
most part, if he just bets the big on the turn, then you have to fold. And
Right.
if you had just gotten it on the flop, then you aren't really getting it in with good equity. If he has, you just have the one overcard and the flush draw. I mean, it's not the greatest equity to get it in with when you don't even know if his range could just be like really, really tight with a 5 or maybe even pocket kings or aces. I don't know, but I think it's okay. Just pocket aces or kings is kind of ridiculous to think that he could have, but I think it's okay to flat the flop. You can definitely just check fold the turn if he bets again and assume that he has a king, and then, that way when you flat the flop as well with like queens or jacks, because you think he's raising this flop, what can he have, and you have a decent hand, you can call those and not really have to be feared that he can bet all these turns that are flush draw cards or cards that potentially scare you off, because you can have other hands in your flatting range as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. All right. So the hero does flat, which brings us to a pot of 24K going into the turn. Turn is a jack of clubs. Hero checks, but then villain bets 12.3K. So roughly a little bit over half pot. Sounds like you guys think we should probably just fold at this point?
I don't know. Because now we have a gut shot and a nut flush draw. And he bet half pot, so we're getting 3-1.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the fact that we added a few more outs with the gut shot.
I mean, I don't really know if you can really call with 12K, almost 12.5K with 31K behind on the turn.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to be less than that because, effective is less than that because the hero, well, we put in, how much have we put in so far? We put in 2.3 pre-flop. We put in 8K on the flop, so that's, 8.5. So we're, at basically like 10.5 there, almost 11 there, and then 12K. So we're half of our stack is in here already. We have 22 behind really on the river.
On the turn or the river?
On the river.
If we were to call this.
I'm talking about the turn.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about what we do if we go to the river. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, if you blank the river, as played, you'd have to check fold, but I don't know if you can really check call the turn and then check fold the river when you blank.
Is a check raise here ever good? Like check shove? Now that you've picked up some outs?
I mean, if you feel like he's full of crap, but it's just a spot where his range is, I don't. If I don't have any dynamic where I would have just gotten on the flop if I felt his range was weak, I guess. But at this point, if I'm just, what range are you putting him on? I guess it's a 5. So I don't really think you have the price to just get your stack in on the turn here when he's going to call every time.
Right.
Well, let's
only one card to come.
Let's break down the outs here. So we have nine diamonds, and we have what is it? 4 10s. So we have 13. We assume pretty clean outs here, unless the guy has a boat. But I don't know if we're assuming that at this point.
I think it's hard for him to have a boat.
Right, exactly. Given the board, so let's just assume we have 13 outs where we know we're ahead. So that gives us 26% on the river. Equity. If we show we have a 26% chance of winning, and we have to think sometimes aces are good here because like a villain like this will probably overplay a king if he has like king jack or something.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, so let's give him 2 instead of there's 3 ace outs. Let's give him like 1.5. So so that's like 14.5. So like we have 30%, nearly 30% equity here. So back to Derek's question, knowing that we have nearly 30% equity, do we, is a shove profitable here, or should we just reduce the variance, keep our big stack, and move on? Tough one.
Fold.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I mean, I probably would fold, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. I think if you're going to try to get the chips in, if you have, like Ryan was saying, or if you have the read and the dynamic, then you should just be getting it in on the flop. Otherwise,
you could definitely have kings that he flatted pre. He could also have. I just don't think. I don't really see people taking this line that often, especially versus an MP1 open with just a king. And, I think you have to especially factor in having kings some percentage of the hand, or some percentage of the time, and then you have no outs.
I think to the point that you made, Ryan, about momentum, and not momentum, but just basically game flow, the poster did say I hadn't seen him get too out of line post flop. And so it's possible that this guy could be bluffing us on the flop because, our c-bet range is really, like, if I'm sitting there in his position, like, I'm going to think your c-bet's, full of crap a decent amount of time, and maybe I'll make a move. But we're going to just bank that we haven't seen him do something like that. So we're going to have to just assume that he has something here and take a lower variance approach, I think is what I'm hearing you guys say.
Yeah, I mean, It really depends. Like, I mean, I find it hard to believe that he doesn't have more information over 82 hands when this guy's been playing 40% of hands. So, I mean, if I was at this hand and I just check called the flop and on this turn, I would really, I mean, if there was like any chance that he could just have like something like Queen 10 or, a lower flush draw or anything like that he was betting the turn with because he just wanted to bet again because he picked up some kind of equity and because you didn't re-raise the flop, I don't know. But in those cases where I just felt like there was any possibility of that, I'd probably check shove the turn.
Okay.
Yeah. But it sounds like you need a lot more information than what he has, or at least what he's provided us.
And actually, I want to close out on this topic. So basically in this hand, so Derek, let's wrap the hand, then I want to go to this game flow because I think an interesting topic has come up here with Ryan.
Cool.
So what happens the rest of the hand?
So the hero does opt to call the 12.3K bet on the turn. So now we have a 48K pot on the river. The river is a 7 of spades, and hero checks. Villain bets 17.4K into that, and obviously now we definitely have to fold. So probably, from the sounds of it, we probably could have just folded the turn, saved ourselves some chips. And our hero has invested quite a bit of his stack now, or lost quite a bit of his stack on this hand. So probably could have saved himself some chips had he played it a little bit differently. So.
Okay, so but that a reoccurring theme here has been game flow. So I've never heard you talk this much about game flow, Ryan. I mean, I'm sure you've paid attention to it before, but have you been doing something differently lately where this is important? Like, are you paying more attention or something? Because it's really interesting that you've mentioned it quite a bit lately. Is it just realizing that there's more information there than?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's tons of information, and then if you're playing a style where you're opening lots of pots especially if you're min raising, people are just gonna play more hands against you than they would against if you're playing, this just a random tag style, and they're gonna play more hands than they're used to, and they're gonna do stuff that they're not used to, and then you can just read hands well, then you can pick stuff off, and they'll play different. Like if you're c-betting, like you said earlier, that if you're raising tons of hands and you c-bet a king 5-5 flop with an image where you should have tons of air in your range, then people will start to do things like raise your c-bet with ace 10 or whatever, and when you get to that point, then you can just click it back with ace queen of diamonds because you could do the same thing with 5-7 offsuit or 5-7 suit or whatever,
right?
That you just had nothing.
Right.
And then they'll end up getting in worse flush draws versus your ace queen, and then that's where it's profitable to do so.
Yeah, and I think most of the audience, including myself and probably Derek, I couldn't pick up all this stuff with 15 tables going on, and you're who you are, and you can do that. So, would you recommend that? I mean, what I'm hearing is probably just play less tables so that we can pick up on this stuff and just be better at the tournaments we're playing.
Yep. If you feel like you're not confident in tournaments, then you should really just eliminate tables until you feel like you know exactly what's going on all your tables. And I know if you play sit and goes, it's really easy to amass table because you don't really have to think at all. But if you're playing tournaments and you're really trying to have a good ROI and play well, then you definitely should not play too many tables that you can't handle. You might have an ROI of 5% with the amount of tables that you play. That's a larger amount. But then if you cut it maybe in half, then you have a 30 or 40% ROI.
Right. And you become a better player, right? You just become a better player because you're thinking
Yeah,
more.
you start
You're not
thinking
autobody.
more and you play better, and then you get more comfortable playing more hands, and then you win money that way because you're playing more hands, and you move up, and you're already comfortable with playing the amount of hands that you need to play when you are playing higher stakes, so it becomes easier that way as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. A good sign might be if you're posting a hand with somebody you've played 100 hands with, and you say I don't have a read, then you're probably not paying enough attention.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Gameflow
If especially
and dynamics.
it's different if you played 100 hands with them and they're like 12-11, but if someone's 40 and 30 over, or whatever this guy was, 68-38 over 40 hands or 82 hands, and that means he's played a lot of hands, and you should really have some kind of idea of how he's playing, and then you should have some kind of range for what that raise was on the flop.
Yeah.
Excellent. Really insightful stuff, guys.
Yep, very cool. I think we could probably wrap it up there for our strategy segment today.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming out and doing this one. I got a lot out of this one, so appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Thank you, Panda. We'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. See ya.
Excellent.
See ya.
guys.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. Hey, this is Killingbird from TournamentPokerEdge.com, here to tell you about our exclusive rakeback program. Tournament Poker Edge offers up to 40% rakeback on sites such as Full Tilt Poker, Absolute Poker, Ultimate Bet, and Cake Poker. If you're playing online and not getting rakeback, you are just giving money away. So visit rakeback.tournamentpokeredge.com and sign up for the Tournament Poker Edge rakeback program and start getting paid to play today. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. Thanks once again to Charlie and Ryan for stopping in today to talk a little bit about early position opening and c-betting, and we got into a little bit of a cool conversation towards the end that I don't think we really planned on, but it was certainly a really good learning spot for us.
Yeah. Before even that, shout out to Benny Maka. The bumper music that we came back with was a song he posted in the TPE music thread. Jebediah, she's like a comet. Pretty cool song. Pretty
yeah,
cool.
I actually that's one of my favorite threads because I've picked up a bunch of new music from that thread, and I'm always looking for stuff, especially when I'm late in a session and need to keep myself motivated.
Right.
So it's cool to just go in there and hit play on a few things and be like, hey, that's pretty cool.
Yep, yeah, I did that the other night with that song, and I thought it was really cool. And I mean, when I first heard it, like the intro, I was like, oh, that's bumper music.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there we go. We can use that. So shout out to Benny. Benny's an awesome poster, by the way. I don't know if he's got a ton of posts, and his stuff is always really good. So shout out to Benny.
Yep.
Cool.
He's been great.
Cool. Oh, and I just have to say, I'm sorry, but I like your latest contribution to the off-topic thread. Do you want to explain yourself, or should I out you? I mean, what's up?
To the music thread?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
I think that my motivation for posting that video was very clear.
Okay. Well, so first of all, if you guys don't know this about Killingbird, he's a former bassist for a metal band.
Guitar player.
Oh, I thought you were bassist. Sorry, he's a guitar player for a metal band, right? So the guy's got cred. The guy's done it all, right? And his I don't know if he's posted anything else in this thread, but his last posting is Avril Lavigne. And like, what?
I started off by posting Trail of Dead.
Yeah.
But that was a while ago.
Yeah.
And then I just instantly destroyed my credibility by putting Avril Lavigne. I almost went and tried to find something really cool to post to regain it, but I decided to just roll with it.
So no offense to all you Avril Lavigne fans, but it was kind of unexpected that KB would be posting an Avril Lavigne song. And okay, I do understand your motivation because it is quite a video to look at. So I'm with you on that.
Well, and as much as I'd like to claim that I just posted it because I think she's really cute, my wife would out me and say that I have a live DVD of hers. I have several CDs. So
hey,
we all have our
please
pleasure.
stop. Okay, that'll be on the cutting room floor. We got an image to maintain. Anyway, no, just busting your chops. So cool. Yeah, I thought that was a really fun strategy segment. Really interesting conversation. Both in the topics we thought we were going to talk about, early position opens and c-betting, specifically around c-betting size and just the whole evolution of the game along that. But, it went in a direction with Ryan talking about Gameflow so much that really I really got a lot from. I really enjoyed his point of view on that and the way he talked about it, because everyone has been increasing table after table after table and trying to play as many, to sort of run out variants, but there's a lot to be said for really developing reads and focusing on what's happening at the table and the game flow of the table.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's, like you said, it's sort of an unrecognized part of the game for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Either they're just looking at the numbers on their HUD, or they're playing so many tables and don't have a HUD that they're not, paying attention to anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's something, like you said, it came a little bit out of left field, but I think it was really interesting. It really could have probably been a podcast all on its own.
Yeah, it could have been. I have to admit to being more like a HUD bot, right? Because I can when I think you said, if you have 100 hands on a guy and you don't know what a 40-30, what a 40-27, what his playing style is, I kind of cringe because I think that's me. I just kind of I'll post hands. I'm like, yeah, this guy is aggressive. And I only say that because I have 100 hands and he's a 40-27, but I have no idea what that means, like what he did. And that's really probably not good, I mean,
yeah.
Sure, if you're, a master like Ryan, I guess it doesn't matter, even though he seems to care. But, if you're just a regular person, it probably is not a good thing if you can't, speak to what that means in realistic terms.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it all the time. I mean, when I post hands or when I send a hand to a buddy to look at or something, a lot of times I'm just like, I don't really have a read, or at least I don't remember having one. That's kind of bad. I mean, unless your excuse is that you just got moved to the table or he just got moved to the table, you should really have some read.
Yeah, and it really caught my ear. Sorry, not my eye, but it caught my ear this time around because I just finished watching his latest series. Part 3 went up today, so I haven't seen that one yet. But his first 2 parts of his latest series, I just watched them, as part of my sort of downtime, and he talks so much about table flow. That's why what he said there was really catching my ear, because he's been talking about that a lot in his videos. And he's just talking about, you'll see him say things like, I haven't, 3-bet light here in a long time, or I haven't been opening in a long time, or this guy's doing this quite frequently, or this guy has, plays like this. And, it really helps his game because he's being very, very specific against them. He's taking very specific strategies because he knows something about the tendencies of players, and it seems to work for him.
Yeah, perfect example. I was actually watching part 3 of his live sweat today, and there was a guy on his right who had been opening quite a bit, and what Ryan said was interesting to me. He said, I'm going to probably have to start 3-betting this guy if he's going to keep opening this much. He didn't say, I hope I get a hand that I can 3-bet him with.
Right.
He just said, I'm going to have to 3-bet him. It doesn't really matter what the hand is.
No, it doesn't really matter what the hand is. It's almost better not to have a hand, because then you don't have to call a bet, if you're wrong, Yeah. It's, definitely.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. And I also think, like what you mentioned, the thinking about your own play and people's perception of you. And, sometimes you're sitting there going, man, I wish I could get a hand so I could open and steal some blinds. But sometimes you just have to say, well, I haven't opened in 2 orbits and I'm under the gun, so I know I'm going to get some credibility.
Right.
So, I might as well just go ahead and open 7-8 suited here, and, maybe I take the blinds down. But if not, that's not a problem either. I'll just play post flop.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm anxious to start a session. So I can put.
I know. I really want to play. I'm playing tonight. Are you playing tonight?
Actually, I'm not going to play it tonight, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to tuck this away and save it. But yeah, I think I'm going to try to just kind of look at the table and go, and look at somebody and see if I can, talk to myself about what that person's been doing or
right.
What their image is or what their perceived image of me might be and things like that.
Yep, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to definitely – I've already been dropping tables, but I'm going to maybe even drop more and focus more on what I'm playing. I don't know. I'm definitely going to take something away from that.
Yeah. So, and I think I have a feeling this is an area of the game that we might delve into more in the future, either on future podcasts or articles or, maybe even a 3 video or something. So,
yep. Cool.
See where that goes. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about what's going on Tournament Poker Edge.
Yeah, so, first thing, there's a video which by the time this goes live, this podcast will probably be ready about the same time the video is ready. We are introducing a new type of video, a new series where hosted by Ween, where he will review either the Sunday Million or the Sunday Warm-Up, or both, the replay that plays on Stars. If you guys don't know, Stars will replay the final table of the Sunday Million and the warm-up with all hole cards face up, and it's just in a loop. It always just keeps playing all throughout the week, and they post it like Tuesday, and then it just keeps playing. And so last night we opened it up, and Ween, hosting, I was his guest commentator, I guess, and we just watched the table and talked about what was happening, the hands, the strategies, the implications of pay jumps, the actual we got into the chop and our thoughts on how they were chopping.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a really neat format. I really enjoy doing it, and we're gonna do it if people like it. We're gonna do it relatively frequently. Won't promise every week because it is a very constrained schedule to get that done, but pretty regularly, and he'll rotate who he does it with. I think I'll probably be doing it a lot with him because I ask the questions like we do on the podcast, and I'm sure you'll go on that with him as well. But I'm sure he'll be bringing in guests to do that with him as well. Both in and outside of TPE at times. So,
well, I remember watching the time when he did like some random $2 final table when you couldn't even see people's cards.
Yeah,
and I was fascinated by that. So
yeah.
I can't wait to see how this comes out. I think it's gonna be really cool. Hopefully our members appreciate it.
Yeah.
As much as we think we will.
Yeah, this is fun to do. I'm excited to see the feedback on it.
Nice.
Yep. So that's video wise. That's the latest stuff that's going on.
Cool. We also we just put up a new article this morning from Jamie Glazier, who contributed an article a couple of weeks ago, but he's a mental game coach, works with Joe Hashem and a few other high stakes MTT regs, and just a really smart guy and has a really interesting take on mental preparation and dealing with bad beats and things like that. And I have kind of enjoyed reading what he's had to say. So we posted that article this morning, and we also created a mental game forum on the message boards where people can post questions for him or for other members, or just to kind of have discussions about how to prepare yourself and how to keep your spirits up during downswings and things like that. So
that's awesome.
I think it's gonna be a cool forum, and hopefully people will check that out and get some good use out of it.
The response to that has been really good so far. I think people are really. I mean, just his first article got really great reviews.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's awesome. I talked to Jamie myself, and he's really pumped about being part of the TPE community. Just generally talking to our members, and I have to say, even before we talked to Jamie about doing this, I've noticed a change in Joe Hashem myself, even before knowing he was working with Jamie. I mean, if you watch him on the big game, his last appearance, you could see things that would have, because he had a reputation for being kind of grouchy and even with his huge score and his win, complaining about his luck, right? And that's everyone takes bad beats, and no matter what your past successes, it hurts. But just watching his last couple of appearances live, you could just see a calmness, in him, and a centeredness, and I mentioned that to I mentioned what I said. I said he looked more relaxed to Jamie, and Jamie said we worked that word. We worked really hard on that concept of just relaxing, and so it's exactly what they're working on. So it's great. It's really useful stuff, I think, and I think Jamie's a pro at it. So it's such a big part of the game, and I'm so glad that we can offer that to the members.
Yep. Yeah. So hopefully people dig it. The other thing that I'm excited about is the fact that the second cycle of the Tournament Poker Edge League is starting up. That'll be starting up next week, the first week of March. So, we're excited. We had a pretty good turnout for the last one, but we're hoping to get it even better this time around. We've actually added some cold hard cash to the overall prize pool, and we've also sort of made a commitment to ourselves to get the pros to play a little more frequently. So we're going to, they won't be able to make it every time, obviously, but we're going to do our best to get those guys in there playing with the members and give people a chance to knock those guys out. So make sure you visit the member games forum for all the details on dates and passwords and all that kind of good stuff.
Nice. Looking forward to that as well. See you guys in the
Yep.
felt.
Yeah, so lots of exciting stuff happening, and couldn't be much more excited about everything that we got going on over at Tournament Poker Edge.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for this week. Anything else you got to add before we're done?
Nope. All good. Thanks again to Ryan and Charlie for joining us. Good luck to UKB in the next couple of weeks at the tables. And anyone who's going to be in Atlantic City on March 2nd, hit me up. We'll all meet up and get a TP gathering going.
Sounds good. Wish I could be there. All right. Well, thank you again, and we will see all of you next time on the Tournament Poker Edge on the Tournament Poker Edge podcast.
Wait, on what?
On the Tournament Poker Edge podcast.
Too much Avril Lavigne for you. Stop looking at your screen, buddy.
Sorry.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas Plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Lock in intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Carry mine, though she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Carry mine, though she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her